What's up, guys? It's your boy Izzy, and I am here to preview all of the Premier League action that's going to be taking place this Tuesday. And if you're new to the channel, you know exactly what to do. Make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button to let YouTube and everybody else know that you are enjoying this content. Now, we're going to go ahead and get started in Nottingham Forest as they welcome Arsenal. Now, Arsenal are a team that is challenging up at the Premier League table, trying to make sure that they win their first league trophy in 20 years. That's going to be a tall order, especially coming off the back of the news that Jurgen Klopp is going to be leaving Liverpool. And then you already know what Manchester City are. They are a machine, and they're going to be trying to make sure that they secure a record-breaking fourth consecutive Premier League title. So this is going to be a game that Arsenal are going to have to win. There's absolutely no question. The margins are so tight when it comes towards the business end of the Premier League season. And if they're not able to dispatch of Nottingham Forest, the next game that they have is a home game against Liverpool. It's going to be vitally important for them to get the 3 points in this game. Now, they are revisiting the scene of their title capitulation, if you want to call it, or some people call it the bottle job. And some people just call it Manchester City's irrevocable strength when it comes to pressing the teams that are at the top of the table. If it's going to be an Arsenal title win this season, they are going to need to dispatch of Nottingham Forest. These are the teams that you would expect Arsenal to collect the 3 points from. It is for that reason that I'm going to go for a 3-1 Arsenal victory. Now, this was the scene of some very tough memories for Arsenal fans, and if they're going to be able to go over there and give them the support that we all know that the Gooners are going to be able to do, well, this should be a game that Arsenal take. Now, Nottingham Forest on the other side are still going on that miniature manager bounce where Nuno Espirito Santo, who's been doing a relatively good job on the role so far, is going to be hoping to try and capitalize on maybe some nervousness from Arsenal, and the scene of last season, the spirit of last season is going to be very important for Forest in this game. This does not mean that they are unable to take anything from this game, and I do think that Nottingham Forest are going to be very dangerous. Players such as Gibbs White, Serge Aurier, they have some people who can definitely hurt Arsenal. Now, I do think that if they are going to get anything from this game, they're going to have long periods of sitting back, and they will try and use the same tactical approach that most of the other teams have gone up against Arsenal have used, which is sit back, try to strike them on a counterattack. If you can, capitalize on a couple of set pieces, and maybe you can get Arsenal shaken. If they do go ahead in this game, I can see them absolutely trying to take that approach. However, if Arsenal do go ahead, it might be a long night for Nottingham Forest. So that's going to be our first game. Luton Town host Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, I have a special place in my heart for Luton Town. I do think that the Hatters are showing a very good fighting spirit, and I think that if they continue in this vein, they might be that team that pops up from the bottom three that ends up securing safety at the end of the season. I do think that the way they play the game is very admirable, and the way they try to go at teams despite punching well above their weight is going to be a very important thing for them towards the end of the season. I do think that they can easily catch up Everton or even the Nottingham Forest and drag them down into that position to which nobody wants to be in. Over on the other side, I do think that Brighton are a team that are not as impressive as they were last season. De Zerbi probably has a few players that are out, of course, because of the AFCON tournament and the Asian Cup. But at the end of the day, Brighton is Brighton. And one of the things that I do like about De Zerbi is that his team is very plug and play. So it doesn't really matter who he puts in that position. They, just like a Liverpool or a Manchester City, are a very system-based team, so they should be able to perform well. Now, in this game, I'm going to have this game ending 1-1. I think that Luton Town, being at home, they're very solid whenever they play at Kenilworth Road, and I'll just back them to try and get something off of this game. Brighton, on the other hand, have not had the easiest of games recently, and they have been kind of topsy-turvy. They've been up and down, and I do think that if Luton Town are able to bring in the very same support that they always do, well, this should be a game that they can get something out of. So my prediction for this is going to be a 1-1 draw. Next up, Everton travel to Fulham in a game that Fulham are going to need to win this game. They have had a pretty tough run of fixtures recently. They just got eliminated from both the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup from Newcastle and Liverpool. And both those games were admittedly very tough games to try and win. So one can forgive Fulham for not winning any of those games. But I do think that they need to get their league form back on track. You don't want them to end up getting into a run of negative results, because we've seen Fulham have those. At some point early this season, they did go on about a 6 or 7 game winless streak. And so it would be important for them to get something from this game. They also tend to play very well against Everton, and it is for that reason that I'm going to have them winning this game 2-0. Everton have been very good away from home, surprisingly, so they are not going to be any slouches in this game. I think they might be able to cause Fulham some problems, especially since Fulham are on a mini poor run. But league-wise, Fulham have been doing okay, and Everton are going to need to accumulate as many points as they can, because we still don't know what's going to happen as far as maybe an extra point deduction from their infringement of the fair play rules, or as they call them, the sustainability rules. So Everton are in a precarious position right now, but if they are able to, they will need to get as many points as they can on the board. It almost felt as though Everton had this subconscious need to get those points ahead of time, because they forthrightly went and told the Premier League that they knew that they had infringed on the rights, and they are still going to fight those sanctions. But at the end of the day, I do think that they need to keep on getting those points, because they need to make a big buffer between themselves and, for example, Luton Town, who are showing a lot of fight. And in the relegation fight, if you don't really do anything, by the time you get to about 28 or 29 games, your fate could be sealed. So this is going to be an important game for them. However, I do back Fulham to get the 3 points today. 2-0. And next up, Crystal Palace host Sheffield United, a game that I'm going to predict for Crystal Palace to win 1-0. Now, Crystal Palace are in need of victories, and their slip down the table has been gradual, but it's been very concerning, especially because they don't seem to be playing well. And most of the games, especially the ones they recently had against Arsenal, were very dour. The performance was wanting, and Roy Hodgson, for as good a manager as he's been throughout his career, he seems as though he's out of ideas. It's going to be important for them to try and make it at least towards the end of the season. I don't think a managerial appointment right now would suit Crystal Palace well. I think they need to try, and even if it's to limp over the final hurdle, they need to go ahead and do it, because I can see a lot of destabilization, especially with the sentiment that's swirling around the fan base right now. We saw the banners that they had unfurled towards the end of the game against Arsenal, and this is one of those situations where I do back the fans completely. I do think that Crystal Palace has been let to kind of meander on the wayside, and they haven't seemed to make any innovation since their appointment of Patrick Vieira, which was supposed to herald a new pathway for Crystal Palace, one in which they would be trying to secure more youthful players. They would be trying and stabilize themselves in the league a lot more, but it hasn't gone to plan. On the other side, we have Sheffield United, who are going to try and give it their best go. The reappointment of Chris Wilder has reinvigorated the fan base somewhat. They have a very special place in their heart for him. But if they are not going to be able to win these types of games, Sheffield United will quite possibly be the first team to get relegated, because the run is going to be extremely tough right now. All the teams at the bottom look as though they are capable of getting results. Burnley has been waking up recently, and so you don't want to get cut adrift. However, in this game, I am going to go for Crystal Palace to win 1-0. I think that being at home after a little while off, I think Crystal Palace should be able to try and get something against Sheffield United. I do think that Sheffield United, under Chris Wilder, they can threaten to be a good team, and they will definitely have more defensive solidity than they did before. But at the end of the day, I think that they are very undercooked for the Premier League this season, and the appointment of Chris Wilder might just be a stay of execution. And if they don't get anything from the next couple of games, at some point, reality is going to set in. And if they're cut adrift, especially from the Luton and the Evertons of this world, they will find themselves relegated. And then finally, we have Aston Villa against Newcastle, a game that promises to be a very interesting game. Aston Villa score a bagload of goals when they're at home, and Newcastle are also worth a lot of goals themselves. This game tends to favor usually the home team. Aston Villa lost 5-1 in their very first game of the season against Newcastle, and so they will be seeking some form of retribution against Eddie Howe's side, who have gone off the boil a lot recently. They are 10th in the table, and Newcastle don't seem as though they might be able to reprise another European role. But anything can change. We still have a fair amount of games before the season ends. I do think Aston Villa are going to be buoyed not only by the fact that they were thrashed by Newcastle at the start of the season, but the fact that they are in the top four and they are firmly in this top four race. If you want to consider them for the title, they are still there. They are tied on 43 points with a host of other clubs. There's no reason as to why Unai Emery can't believe that his team will not win the title. So at this point, hope springs eternal for both sides. I think that Aston Villa are best placed to win this game simply because Villa have an impeccable home record. And it is for that reason that I'm going for a 3-0 victory for Aston Villa. I don't think that Newcastle are going to be up for the fight. I can see Aston Villa absolutely getting up and getting ready to beat Newcastle. At the very least, simply to get retribution for that capitulation that they had at the start of the season. But anyway, guys, that has been my preview. I will be back tomorrow or later on today with the reviews of the games. I'm sorry I didn't have any video during the week. It was a very tough weekend to try and have stuff out. Calculus is a very, very tough course. But anyways, if you like, please hit that like and the subscribe button to let YouTube and everybody else know that you are enjoying this content. And until I'm going to be reviewing the games later on, guys, peace.